Namaskar, Shweta ji. I welcome you back on this small little podcast of ours for Global Menopause Collective.
Hi, Harmanjeet. Namaste and Happy New Year. And a big warm hello to everyone who's joined in. And I just realized I didn't add my last name on there. So it's Shweta Vikram for those of you joining us.
So, for the good of the audience, I'd like to introduce again a very special person to Global Menopause Collective. She has been supporting us, guiding us, and basically nurturing this uh, um initiative of ours from the very beginning. I am so happy to be introducing Shweta Vikram ji. She is an international award-winning author. She's the host of the Grounded Leader podcast. She's a burnout and a grief coach. She is a doctor of Ayurveda. She's a trauma informed yoga practitioner, and she joins us all the way from New York. Thank you so much, Shweta ji.
Thank you for having me on the podcast, Harmanjeet. It's a very important work that you're doing, especially around building community and conversations that often go overlooked. I'll tell you before we
Absolutely.
start even talking, I've been seeing a lot of clients in the new year with perimenopause issues, right? Um,
Right.
and one of them said to me, she's South Asian, she was like, do you even remember when our mothers went through perimenopause or menopause? Because it was something that they were told, you're getting older, just deal with it. There were no conversations. You saw something was different about mom
Hmm.
and you thought she was being mean, but we were never
Hmm.
taught compassion. We never held space because there was no conversation around what might have been going on. That's really stayed with me.
Hmm. Yeah. And we've grown up seeing that, and we sort of accept that. And this acceptance is the one which is actually, budging us from time to time. And this is something which we are not able to gulp down very easily, aren't we?
And people are so uncomfortable. It's, when I've heard people say, oh, don't talk about trauma at dinner parties. So now, what do we talk about? Only vacations, shopping, which school your kids go to? These are real human conversations. So why are we isolating these conversations into, okay, 9 to 9:15 we can talk about this. Like, why can't it be a part of our lives? Like, when this client, this rogi, shared this reflection with me, it really made me think. I was very aware of when my mother was going through menopause, my inclination, who I am, and we had conversations. But my mother was not comfortable either, Harmanjeet, because women carried shame and taboo. And that's what makes me think about the anxiety and grief that she might have navigated when she was transitioning into a new phase. Because very often women are told, when you hit puberty, keep yourself safe. Then you get married, have children, and then there are no stories after that. So it's always made me think about, like, where are those stories? What did women go through when they transitioned into this phase? And sure, they said, oh, it's part of getting older. How can we just shove everything under the carpet and call it, it's part of tradition, it's part of society, it's part of getting older?
One of the reasons what I think is that I guess our generation and previous two generations, we've been brought up into keeping things under wraps for the sake of the peace of the house, right? For the peace of the house, for looking good, for sounding intelligent and sounding acceptable. So it was all about looking good. It was not about feeling good. So we wanted to be presentable. And one of the things that came about being presentable was that, okay, you talk about the good stuff, let the bad stuff be in wraps. So the bad stuff somehow came to be construed upon as, okay, everything that meant misery, that meant pain, that meant grief, that meant anxiety was supposed to be put in the shadows. That's my opinion.
That's
That's my opinion.
that's no, that's a very interesting way of looking at it, and I agree with it. But also, I feel patriarchy has a role to play in it, right?
Yes,
It's a
true, very
woman's
true.
issue, so we don't talk about it. A woman's role was defined just the way I shared a couple of minutes ago. This is what you've been put on planet Earth for. And I still cringe when I think about it. Like, I'm grateful I'm part of a generation and I am in a space where I can voice what, as a woman, I feel when you tell me what my role is, what each phase should be. But I
Hmm.
feel so bad that our mother's generation or our grandmother's generation, they didn't
They
have
did not have a
access to
chance.
feminine products, to conversations, and towards that phase where, it's a big change. There are hormones fluctuating. And there's no room for empathy. There's no room for conversation. It's just one of those things. Then you make that checklist. Get to her, doll. Keep a lid on your
True,
emotions.
very
That's
true.
how it was dealt with.
Very true. Very, very true. And I kind of feel sorry for that stage where women had to just, go through everything by themselves. Everything by themselves. Now you have communities. Now you have so much of talk. Where was all this 50 years back, 20 years back for that matter? Nowhere.
Absolutely. Even 10 years ago, Harmanjeet, depending on where you live, conversations shape differently. Our circles, and where you live, I don't necessarily mean the city or the country or the continent. It's the spaces, our ecology, our ecosystem.
Absolutely.
You and I might have been privy to this conversation even when we were younger. But there are people in abundant urban spaces where the ecosystem doesn't allow for these conversations.
Right.
And it makes
Absolutely.
me think about what's happening to women's nervous system, what's happening to the mental and emotional well-being, where you feel like, I don't feel like how I used to feel before, but there's no further articulation because there's no reference point, there's no context, there is no benchmark, and there are no people who've been trained
Absolutely.
to be humane about this transition of phase. It's something
Hmm.
you just get over. When menstrual cramps, get over them, do this, do that. Those were the conversations, and that's what is happening towards this phase, this transition. And even perimenopause, at least within the South Asian community, it's a newer conversation. People still started to talk about menopause, but we didn't hear enough about
Absolutely.
perimenopause.
People don't differentiate. That's the problem. People don't
Yes.
know how to differentiate between perimenopause, menopause. What is perimenopause? Half of them are not even bothered. This is one of
And
those ladies' problems. They'll sort it out themselves. It's your problem. You sort it out yourself.
And
You know,
anything that you say, oh, it's one of those days, it's mood
one
swings.
of those
So the
problems. Yes.
patriarchy angle of berating women, and I'll tell
Hmm.
you, I listened to a podcast last year. It blew my mind. This doctor was talking about how so many South Asian women enter perimenopause in their mid 30s.
But that's the truth. That is the truth.
No, but the point being, the number of South Asian clients, family members, friends I meet with, not one person was like, oh, I knew this.
Uh, right.
It's something they think it happens just before menopause and then it's over. You could be lingering on in that phase of perimenopause, going through misery for 15 years.
More than that, now the average period that a woman goes through perimenopause is approximately 20 to 22 years.
Yeah.
Practically, if you really see from the onset of puberty in a girl till the end of menopause, and probably even after that, her entire life is a hormonal roller coaster. And she does not know one after the other, one after the other, one after the other. There's no predictability. What does she predict and how does she prepare for it? She does not know what's coming the next day. You
And I
know?
think more men need to be involved in these conversations because women, we are, at least our generation, we are talking to our friends, we are talking to our doctors, we are talking to our older cousins. And I'm noticing a difference with women who might be 10 years older than me. They might have a different experience with perimenopause than women in my generation. Because I'm
Hmm.
assuming when, women my generation get into menopause or have already gotten into menopause, their experience is different from even people a decade older. And I think
True.
the difference now is we are trying to, it's not that we didn't want to include men. It was a woman's, like you said, it was labeled as a woman's issue. And even
Right.
many women didn't know this was an issue,
Hmm.
right? It was
That's what the
something
issue
you're just
is.
supposed to deal with.
Right. That's the problem, because they were never told. They were never told that this would be an issue.
Right.
There's no platform which prepares them for this oncoming stage of life. This is a stage of life. And this brings me to a very pertinent question, Shweta ji. Anxiety,
Mm.
does it translate into grief? And how does this stage of perimenopause affect this union of anxiety translating into grief?
So I love that question, Harmanjeet, because I'm thinking, see, perimenopause, it's not just a hormonal shift, right? It's also a nervous system transition when you think about it. The hormones estrogen and progesterone, now they are fluctuating. So the body also loses some of its ability to suppress unresolved emotion. So, you very often hear women say, yeah, when I hit perimenopause or when I hit menopause, I stop to care. So it's really very nuanced. The body has been holding on to that anxiety. It's been holding on to that grief. And doesn't mean there is something wrong psychologically. But I also feel like the system and the body is exhausted from holding on to so much for so long.
Right.
And also, really can bring up that anxiety. Right? When we have conversations like this, when there are blogs, there are spaces for women to tap into, to connect with others,
Hmm.
to build community, that's very different
Hmm.
in navigating anxiety. When you hear somebody else say, hey, me too, you're not alone, automatically see the nervous system feels, oh, it's not just me, I'm not going crazy. Because that's
Right,
what we've been
right,
told. Now
right,
stop being crazy. You're on your cycle, stop being
right.
crazy. You're going through this transition, stop being crazy. The other thing is something that I think a lot about my mom's generation or even our grandmother's generation. They didn't get to greet this transition. A woman was told her job was to bear children. I'm putting it very crudely. So
Yes.
now that
No.
phase is over, what is their job? They were communicated just one thing: protect yourself until you get married, take care of your in laws and your husband, and bear children once you're married, and then the messages stop. So, what are you doing? The in laws might be gone by the time a woman hits menopause, or right? Children, they might be empty nesters. Husbands are busy, the marriage is in a different stage. They're grieving so much that they don't even realize they're grieving. And as a result, what happens, like I was talking about, the nervous system is also dysregulated. Perimenopause specifically will bring on, and we just know about these stereotypes of hormonal fluctuations, right? Yes, that happens. But
That's
the
exactly
sleep,
what's been spoken about. Yes.
right? But sleep,
Hmm.
digestion,
Hmm.
and all of them are connected. So, from a Western science perspective, when you think about it, majority of us survive in sympathetic nervous system, unfortunately, and which is great when it needs to be. It's fight or flight, right? That's the mode, which is when you're crossing the road and a car is driving towards you, sympathetic nervous system teaches you how to be safe.
Right.
But if we are constantly in looking for a safety and survival, constantly in that fight or flight mode, can you imagine how dysregulated we are?
Hmm.
And when we are in that sympathetic nervous system constantly, we don't know how to rest and digest. So as a result, our sleep is getting impacted, our digestion is getting impacted. We know there is a gut biome connection. So as a result, our mental health is getting impacted. So coming back to bringing it home to what you asked, there is unaddressed grief. There is the anxiety that people are not talking about, which is the physiological change, but also the repercussions of perimenopause and menopause.
So this is exactly what we've been talking about lately on the podcast, is that there's a state of constant stress, the
Yes.
constant stress that we have normalized. And there's a low level cortisol release happening throughout the day. Now, the moment it stops for some reason, for let's say you go on a vacation, that's when you start to feel awkward. And then that's the point where you start to feel, no, this is something wrong that's happening. That's when rest starts to feel illegal. You become guilty of resting. That means you're not doing enough. That's what you start to think. I'm talking about myself. I start to feel guilty if I'm not under constant cortisol, I would say, regulation, right? When till the time cortisol is not really grabbing me through and through, I'm not comfortable. So that
So
has
that's
become the
really
norm
honest,
of the
Harmanjeet.
thing. Yeah, that's become normal for me. And I'm taking advice from people, from doctors, from Ayurveda. I'm indulging in fascia release for that matter. It all has to be done. You can't just normalize all this. This brings me to something bigger. This brings me to something deeper. We've talked about anxiety. We've talked about its transition to grief. We've talked about the overlay of perimenopause and all this. How does the body store grief? Does it store somewhere, or does it where does the unprocessed grief go in the body, according to Ayurveda?
I'm smiling because it's exactly what I was going to bring up next in our conversation. In Ayurveda, there is this concept of ama, which is
Dharma.
undigested residue or toxins. And when I
Right.
say toxins, people think chemicals. No, I'm talking emotions. I'm talking environmental toxins from the food. Unprocessed emotions become ama. So when something like grief strikes or shock strikes and emotions are not fully processed, it's turning into ama. So when ama increases, our digestive fire, our ability, which is Agni, that becomes dimmer, right? So when the Agni is strong, it keeps the ama at bay. When the Agni is low, or the ama is high, and the ama is high and the Agni is low, that's when we become more vulnerable. So what is happening during perimenopause, if you're not sleeping well, if your digestion is weak, the nervous system is dysregulated, we go through these hormonal fluctuations, will leads to mood swings. And I can say this as a woman, there's so much of guilt around what you said about rest. In our South Asian culture, Harmanjeet,
Hmm.
we've been told rest needs to be earned.
Right.
For a man, you just admitted that. Imagine for a woman, it's 10 times that. So when you're thinking of ama, lack of rest is also created. So when your Agni is that weak, you have all of these toxins in your body, it's making you vulnerable to other diseases as well.
So that means somewhere down the line, your system is becoming sluggish. Am I correct in using that word?
So sluggish for some, heightened for others, depending on the doshic imbalance, agitated for some others. But yes, it's not working optimally. It might not necessarily be nourishing you.
And that starts to become a constant chronic problem, right?
It can. And what this transition is doing is lowering the body's capacity to also suppress unresolved emotions.
Right.
Right? So when women say, I turned 40 and I didn't give a damn, or I turned 50 and I just started to speak my mind, it's a hormonal shift, right? So
Right.
estrogen is becoming lesser,
Hmm.
right? And what are we doing for that nourishment? Or when people say, now I want to take care of myself. So all of these suppressed emotions are also coming to the surface. And if we haven't really taken care of our body, you work in the wellness space. I work in the wellness space, Armanji. We went away around the holiday season on a
Right.
trip. I thought I'd managed my rest, my break well. I was very proud of myself about how I was curating that period. But the first 2 nights, I slept for 9 hours. I felt guilty too. That's
Right.
the South Asian upbringing because rest has to be earned. But I realized I was like, wow, I don't sleep for 9 hours because finally my system felt I didn't have to perform. Because when you're home, we are all performative. Even the home is a safe space. Oh, I need to get groceries. I need to cook. I need to call this one. I need to take care of so and so. The minute you're outside that environment, the nervous system is like, I'm releasing. I'm releasing dopamine too. Like, oh, there is serotonin as well. I can really tap into my parasympathetic nervous system. So when we think of hormones, we are forgetting to include nervous system in our conversations. It's
Hmm.
like one day can make that much of a difference. And women
Absolutely.
struggle for 2 decades.
Right, absolutely, absolutely. Now, Shweta ji, in your practice, you must have come across so many people, so many clients of yours, rogis of yours, who come
Right.
there seeking explanation for what is that safe space. The moment, the thing that you just mentioned, I was about to come to that. Home is safe space, right?
Right.
That's your
For many
entirety
of
of
us.
it. For
And it's a
many of
blessing.
us, for most of us, we seek that safety inside us. Safety means if I'm clothed well, if I'm not hungry, if all my needs are met, then I'm in a safe space. So you've created a checklist for yourself, but somehow that checklist starts to go bigger and bigger. You were supposed to be clothed well, not clothed in certain brands. So unless and until you clothed in certain brands, unless and until you're wearing a Nike shoe, that safety tick mark is not ticked. Am I right in saying that?
It's very interesting to bring that up. I think it's very cultural. I see that more among South Asians or Asians overall, the brand consciousness. But when I work with my other clients, whether it's Hispanic, Black, or Caucasians, I don't sense that as much. People are thinking more about minimalism, less consumerism, more sattva, what brings me inner peace. Because
Huh.
you finally are realizing you've been through that journey and brands don't bring you peace. We all like to feel good, look good, use good things. But does that truly bring you joy? A lot of people might disagree. They say maybe not. As we transition into a different phase, I think what I do, the question that you asked me, Harmanjeet, in my practice is educating people through an Ayurvedic lens. So I remind women, when from the time we are born, it's that anabolic phase till the time we hear puberty, it's kapha stage, right?
Right.
So it's building. From puberty until you hit menopause is pitta phase. This is when dreams, ambition, passion, family, children, whatever
Absolutely.
people choose, if you choose to be single or more, whatever their choices are, but it's driven by that rajas, that passion, right? That fire.
Right.
And
Right.
it doesn't happen overnight, like, oh, today I'm kapha, tomorrow I'm pitta. No, it's gradual.
It's a gradual
But then,
transition.
right, but this transition where you're going from when people think, oh, I'm in menopause, I'm in vata stage. No, it's gradual. When we go from perimenopause to menopause, you're entering into vata stage. So very often when people say, oh, I just said that abruptness is dryness. So dryness will not just show up in body forms in certain intimate body parts, but dryness might also show up in your vocabulary where you tell
Right.
people off. So it's
Yes.
understanding vata is that cold. When you say, I don't care, doesn't mean you're ruthless. I say that very often. Not my circus, not my monkey, I don't care because I'm in perimenopause. Uh, so I'm noticing where resetting my nervous system is very, very important to me, keeping it regulated. Nervous system is also associated with vata. Movement is associated with vata. Anxiety is associated with vata. See, so all of this is associated with vata. So if I can take care of my nervous system, if I can manage my vata, and I'm not predominantly vata. So for
Huh.
women who are predominantly vata, their struggles might be even louder in some ways, right? Compared to women who are not. But the core I bring it back to women is you need to take care of your vata dosha. Too much travel, lack of sleep, erratic routine, too much talking, all of that can aggravate your vata dosha.
So basically, vata is synonymous to agitation. It's synonymous to loudness.
No, so I would say yes and no. So agitation very often might show up in a imbalanced pitta person.
Okay.
But vata is that person in an imbalanced state rather, is when the mind, so when people say brain fog or I'm not able to focus, those are signs of vata imbalance. So if you're predominantly Vata, you might experience those things even in your 20s. Even in your, you don't
Right.
have to be in perimenopause. But
Right.
all women will experience some form of this because they're in Vata stage of life. So see, there's Vata dosha predominant, but there's also Vata stage of life. We are right now in Vata season, so the sleep issues, anxiety issues are even more heightened. So if you're going through this, getting into this transitioning to Vata stage of life, you're in Vata season and you're predominantly Vata. Can you imagine? It's like the perfect storm. So
Right.
coming back to, even if you're not, so I remind my clients, just because you're not Vata predominant doesn't mean you're not vulnerable. If you lead an erratic lifestyle,
Hmm.
erratic schedule, eat foods that aggravate your Vata dosha,
Hmm.
live in an environment that aggravates your Vata dosha,
Hmm.
you become susceptible. So
Right.
managing your Vata dosha is very, very important because, like I said, nervous system connected to Vata dosha, grief very often connected to Vata dosha, anxiety
Right.
connected to Vata dosha,
Right.
constipation connected to Vata dosha. So it's all Vata which is navigating
Showing
all
up.
of these aspects of our health.
Now, I don't know whether it's the right context to bring in perimenopause overlaying with all this.
Right.
The woman starts to get agitated. So one thing is that okay, whatever's happening to her body, that's we've already discussed that. How does that translate into relationships, Shweta ji?
So again, depending on the doshic imbalance, some people might have agitation, hot flashes. Some might experience more depression, and Ayurveda speaks to it in details. It's again the doshas and the gunas that sort of control and impact what kind of imbalances or struggles that a woman goes through in
Right.
perimenopause. But I've been looking at some statistics, and it's very interesting to me. And I've been talking to my clients, and I'm not here talking about HRT, hormone replacement therapy, not at all. Okay, I'm not for it, against it. That's not part of the conversation. But one
Right.
of them said to me, "It saved my marriage,"
It saved
and
my
that's what made
marriage.
me. It saved my. So I said, "What about it?" She said, "You know what?" I was like, "Were you worried about the risks of cancers and stuff?" She said, I everything felt so out of control that getting that hormone therapy just made me realize I connected with my old self. So it's like I didn't know myself, let alone my partner knowing myself. My agitation was so high. I constantly felt brain fog, disconnected, tired, exhausted, in pain. So what this does is there's a blame factor. You don't get it. People's tolerance levels go down. So if you notice the number of couples separating, they say, oh, we waited until our kids went away to college. But if you tally that with that phase of life, it's also perimenopause, right? Perimenopause, menopause. So the tolerance has gone down, the discomfort has gone up. There is something to be said about that. In fact, let me, I found these statistics. Um, yeah, so there is a 2022 survey by the Family Law Menopause Project that found 7 in 10 women, 73% blamed menopause for the breakdown of their marriage.
God.
Roughly 65% of women in the same survey reported that menopause negatively affected their relationship, citing a loss of physical intimacy, increased arguments, and a partner's lack of understanding as their primary stressors. So we've talked about this, Harmanjeet. What is happening with perimenopause, menopause? Physical symptoms, we talked about it. There is mood swings, hormonal fluctuations, sleep deprivation, grief coming up. So, and there is this reckoning of, when do I take care of myself? This is the last phase, last leg, right?
Hmm.
First, you listen to your parents, then you listen to your partner and the in laws, then you listen to your children.
Children.
When will you listen to yourself? So it's all of these things coming together that
Hmm.
might be impacting the longevity of relationships.
And that's exactly what is happening. If you really ask me, yes, so many couples who are separating, they have this clause that okay, let the children go to the college, and then we'll take a call. and the call is usually a very negative call. I've not seen so many anyone actually come along to actually work out the marriage. And the underlying reason, maybe there is, of course, a lot of buried stuff that's really creating the chaos. But yes, perimenopause and menopause should be something that yes, people should be kind of looking into.
And it should be part of, like, we as a family, we talk about vacations, right? We
Hmm.
talk about what we can or cannot afford. We talk about manners, responsibilities, education, all of them, relationships. Why are we not talking about women's health?
Absolutely. I
You're
always
taught
say,
either to safeguard yourself or your body is a tool for future progeny. But even women are told to be compassionate towards themselves. Nothing is wrong with you. You're going through a transition. It's a phase. And something that I've heard from older people a lot, people stop to notice you. People stop seeing you. And for a woman who's been told this is what your job is, now the checklist is done. No one wants to acknowledge. She's not seeing very often the challenges that she might be going through. Is like, am I making it up in my head?
true.
Imagine feeling invisible. That's increasing grief and anxiety again.
That's somewhere all that buried emotion is actually coming up. My father did not care for me. My brothers didn't care for me. My mother said this to me. What was supposed to be long done with, all that is coming up on the surface. One of the things that I really wish to kind of extend this particular point is, do you think perimenopause actually physically brings up grief? Can that be true, or is it on the emotional surface level?
So I think I would say, as an Ayurvedic doctor, it depends on the individual. But the clients that I've seen or my close friends, we talk a lot about this women's health, right? It does. Sometimes the grief is also about, I wish I had done this, taken care of, said this, why didn't I? So it's not so much necessarily about the blame game, it's also introspection. So the grief might not be just the loss of a loved one, grief is of the time lost. You're not getting the time back, right? Like when I know women in the 40s, when we get together in the 50s, and I'm sure that's true for every decade. I can speak to my generation, right? You're getting together, you're also, everything is not coming from a place of anger. I'm going to do this because I want to prove a point. No, when will I think about myself? So the grief is also softened, right? It's when you look at certain people, doesn't mean you feel envy, but you'd be like, they managed to do it, and I prioritize. And I've heard this from a lot of women. The children have left the nest, as they should, but the unconditional love seems one way. Children get in touch when they need something. Parents are always the ones waiting for them. And did I make a mistake? So the grief is also that introspection and reflection. Like, of course, you love your children, and it is unconditional, no matter what they do. But could I have done things differently so I could have been in a different place? And
Right,
we never know. Hindsight is always 2020. So I think sometimes the grief of what that could have should have been, that comes up. The grief of how we let others treat us a certain way, the grief of regrets, the grief of guilt, and towards self and others, right? Women, we are so hard on ourselves. I mean, all of us, especially South Asian women, constantly trying to prove our worthiness.
absolutely, absolutely. You said it right. You said it right. You said it right.
And what do you get out of it? Because people for whom you do all of this have moved on, or they were not even thinking when they were expecting that out of you.
Right,
It's just their nature to project and demand and expect. So when you think about it, like, and I see this a lot when it comes to health. I did this so much, the grief comes up because now I've lost my health. Was it even worth it? Because that person doesn't even care.
right, right, right. And that's where we all start to believe that there exists a pill. At the end of the day, we'll have that pill and we'll be all fine. So let all that compromise carry on. And of course, there exists a pill that we'll have it at the end of the day and everything's going to be okay. Before we end this podcast, Shwetaji, I would wish you to give us two takeaways from today's talk. Two summary points, two takeaways.
Okay. So something that I was telling you earlier, Harmanjeet, before we started doing this interview, I've had a lot of women reach out to me about
Oh.
perimenopause, specifically in the new year.
Hmm.
So, ladies, if you're listening, create your tribe. Not the one that talks about where you're going shopping or on your vacation. Women who are ready to have real conversations with you. Your friends, your sisterhood, your tribe that will talk about what worked for them, what did, what you could do differently. Having those honest relationships are what keeps a woman sane. You could be in the best marriage, but a man physiologically is not going through what you're going through. Children are on their own trip. The people who get you and will hold your hand are your female friends, female cousins, whoever, whatever that extends to, right? Secondly, start having these conversations at home because
Right.
your partner, your children might not be aware of what you're going through. So don't, instead of building that resent, have that conversation. Try educating them about it. Keep them in the children tell you, Mom, I don't feel well, my stomach hurts. Or your husband might say, I had a bad day, or my boss said this. Why can't you talk about, I'm going through this? I might be teary-eyed. Or you know what? I've been feeling these hot flushes. Maybe I don't want to go to that wedding party when it's like 45 degrees Celsius outside.
Right.
So
Right.
saying that from a place of compassion and bringing them in as your trustworthy buddies, because family is important. If you have one, if you're lucky enough to have one, don't expect they'll know this. People are so self-consumed with their own stuff. Make it a point to educate them. So those are the two things. Build your tribe of trustworthy, nourishing, safe women, friends, and cousins. And at the same time, those who you consider immediate family, and family looks different to different people, bring them in on this conversation because you don't have to go through it alone. You were there for all of these people throughout their lives. It's your turn. They need to show up for you, but how will they show up for you if you think you need to be a part of?
Women don't ask for help. That's what I've seen. Women are shy asking for help. That's what I keep telling everybody around me. Don't be shy of asking for help because how would the other person know what you're going through? So that's very important, a very, very important point that you've raised, Shwetaji.
But Harmanjeet, I wanted to add, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I really need to add this. Women are shy to ask for help because it's a social conditioning. We've been told to give and give and give and take care. We don't know how to ask for help because no one has taught us. We saw mothers and grandmothers sacrifice their lives for others.
Right.
If you see even movies like a mother's feeding the husband, the in-laws, and the children, like,
And she's
really
having the last
underprivileged.
bit of it, actually. Yeah.
So if that's how you've been, and our privileges maybe over generations have increased, but the thinking process hasn't really. So when you don't know, it's so deeply ingrained on you to just be a giver. Asking is not easy, and hence that community of your female friends and cousins and having these conversations at home matter because they empower you to start asking because you deserve it.
Right.
All the love and nourishment.
Right. 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 So, Shwetaji, I would wish that you tell us about this book of yours, A Piece of Peace.
Okay,
What
so
prompted you to
thank you.
write this? What is this book about?
So I wrote this book during the pandemic, Harmanjeet. We
Right.
were all stuck at home and we were all navigating the pandemic the best way we knew. And I wanted people to have a tool um, which involved Ayurveda, meditation, mindfulness. So this book has essays, it has tips, tricks, wisdom, all filled with a lot of compassion.
Right.
to navigate difficult times. And even though it was written during the pandemic and some essays refer to coronavirus,
Right.
these are lessons you can carry anywhere.
Right.
See, for me, I was hit, I was in the ER not too long ago, a few years ago, and almost didn't make it. And I am here today. So I made it my mission to talk about Ayurveda. And my doctors were like surprised how I didn't have a mental health challenge because I couldn't walk and things like that.
Right.
And it was because I said it's because of Ayurveda, mindfulness, and meditation. So one of my doctors said, why don't you write about this? Because I've realized, and it's all about emotional well being and
Right.
daily practices, that daily discipline without being rigid can be very, very helpful, bringing it back to anyone, but especially we were talking about perimenopause, like having these routines can be very good for keeping Vata dosha balance.
Wow.
The pandemic, coronavirus, brought us up. Our nervous system was we lived in that heightened state, right? I
Right.
don't know if I'm going to make it, if my family will be
Right.
safe. See, when I say it, how anxious I sound.
Right.
So this is dysregulating the nervous system, impacting the Vata dosha. So it all comes back to, if we can, Vata is the easiest dosha to get imbalanced, also one of the easiest to bring back to balance. So if we can keep Vata, and so basically when you look at this, it's everyday mindfulness to improve your well-being and creativity.
And
Because
is
if
it
Vata is
available?
under,
Is it
on Amazon,
available
yeah.
on Amazon?
Yes, it
So
is.
we could put the link for the viewers to have a look, and I'm
Absolutely.
sure what a brilliant uh, piece of knowledge that this book actually holds. Brilliant.
Thank you. And it talks about the power of mindful living. And no matter what stage, where you are in life, mindfulness is key. And Ayurveda talks about this, Harmanjeet, that it preaches self-awareness. You will not know how you feel, what feels off, if you don't know how you always felt, right?
Right.
So
Right.
starting
Right.
point is self-awareness. And how do we do that? Through mindful living.
Right.
So there are
Right.
essays where I've interviewed experts.
So. Hmm.
So yeah.
That's brilliant, Shwetaji. And with this, I would really thank you for joining in today. What a beautiful conversation it's been. We've really touched upon a lot of things. We've brought to light quite a lot of topics that were really never talked about.
Right.
Especially from Ayurveda and grief perspective. So thank you so much for bringing so much of knowledge to this community, and with a promise that we will meet again on a panel discussion probably next time. And I wish to see you again on this particular show of ours.
Thank you so much, Harmanjeet. Sorry, there's something in my throat. And thank you to everyone who tuned in these conversations and community in a world that feels isolated. If you're going through this transition as a woman, can feel very isolating. It doesn't have to be.
All right.
So I invite you to follow Harmanjeet and the work that he's doing. You'll hear a lot of experts. It makes you feel less alone. And isn't that part of the agenda of being on this planet, thriving, not just surviving, to be in community? So thank you for having me
Thank
on
you
your
so much.
podcast, Harmanjeet. It was
Thank you so
lovely
much.
again. Thank you.
And looking forward to another time. Yeah.
Me too.